पेन वहाँ छूट गया अंदर उधर। नहीं नहीं, जो उसके बगल में। So, good afternoon everyone. Now, we were अरे आराम से, कोई दिक्कत नहीं। Democracy, sir. I personally feel students when come to class, especially in summers, must be given one charge. See, when you come in summers, it's 50°, right? Everybody must be given some rehydration drink, because from the time you come, from wherever you live to here, half the battle is coming to the class, right? So that is it. Now, when we have discussed India, Nepal yesterday, today we'll first discuss India, Bhutan. Now, when we talk about India, Bhutan, see, there's a decent chance that they can ask a question on India, Bhutan. Primarily, they can ask a question on India, Bhutan, primarily because, I'm just looking for that one diagram. Okay, so they can ask a question on India, Bhutan, and the question that they can ask is primarily so let's first, we'll complete India, Bhutan, then complete India, Maldives, then we'll start with India, Sri Lanka also. Now, when we talk about India, Bhutan, the kind of question that they can ask you is firstly, actually this is supposed to be the 50th year. Last year was supposed to be the 50th year of full diplomatic relations between India and Bhutan. And they have not asked a question on India and Bhutan, even though the Doklam standoff happened, everything happened, they have not asked a question. There's all the more reason that they can ask a question on India, Bhutan. And Bhutan also recently had its elections, right? The 2018 end elections also were there in Bhutan, where Shering Lote came to power in Bhutan. So they can ask you a question on India-Bhutan relationship. In India-Bhutan, the question that they are going to ask is about either security or hydropower. These are the two major issues in India-Bhutan relationship, and the overall significance of the India-Bhutan relationship to regional cooperation in South Asia. Okay. So we'll look at a brief historical background, and here also there is a certain degree of similarity but a marked divergence also between India-Bhutan relationship and India-Nepal relationship. So historically, though Nepal and Bhutan both are Himalayan neighbors, both surrounded by China, but one, that is Bhutan, has pursued largely close relations with India, whereas the other, that is Nepal, though has close relations with India, has often tried to pursue close relations with China as a way to counter India's presence in Nepal. But Bhutan has often, or has rather never, in any substantive way, played the China card against India. So often it is said that though some of the underlying factors in India-Nepal and India-Bhutan relationship are the same, the relationship has taken two divergent directions, with Nepal habitually using the China card and often arguing that Nepal is India locked, whereas Bhutan on the other hand has pursued way more closer relations with India. And when we say pursued closer relations with India, we are not talking about people, We are talking about the government to government level. At the government to government level, India-Nepal relationships have always been very rocky. Whereas in case of India-Bhutan, the government to government relationship has always been very strong and steadfast. Okay, for a long period of time now. So the historical background of the relationship is one thing. Then we'll talk about the issues. Now, when we talk about the issues in the India-Bhutan relationship, these issues are largely related to, firstly, hydropower cooperation, and security cooperation, and that includes the border issue as well, or the Chumbi Valley issue. Or the Chumbi Valley issue as well, the Chumbi Valley or the Doklam. Now, or the Doklam issue as well. Now, and here we also talk about what is the way forward and for the India-Bhutan relationship and its significance. The India-Bhutan relationship and its significance. Now, let's firstly get into the historical background of the India-Bhutan relationship. Now, when we talk about historically the India-Bhutan relationship, first thing to know is that in 1947, India attained independence, right? The same thing that we discussed before also. That in 1949, India attained independence. In 1949, the CCP came to power. The Chinese Communist Party came to power in China with the aim of consolidating its hold over Tibet. Now, here there's something which is important. In 1949, the same year as China slowly started moving towards Tibet and expressed the idea that Tibet is an integral part of China, it is in the same year that India and Bhutan signed the Friendship Treaty. Now, India and Bhutan signed this Friendship Treaty, but this Friendship Treaty was not without a historical background itself. Historically, this Friendship Treaty of 1949 was also based on a previous treaty that we have not discussed. And that treaty was signed between British India and Bhutan. See, Bhutan was a kingdom state, which was an independent state or an autonomous independent state, but a protectorate of whom? British Crown. In the sense that in 1914, I'm just telling you this for continuity's sake, nobody is going to ask you much about it. But in 1914, there is the Treaty of Punakha. And it was in this Treaty of Punakha of 1914, signed between British India and whom? Bhutan, where basically, and the India-Bhutan Friendship Treaty will largely be a continuation of this Treaty of Punakha. Okay, and it is in this Treaty of Punakha, it was said that the British India will be protecting what? Will be providing security to whom? Bhutan. And Bhutan will continue to enjoy autonomy in its domestic affairs. Now, we don't need to get into the details of this treaty. But it was this treaty which said that British India will play a protective role in protecting Bhutan's borders. Okay, and Bhutan will remain domestically, will retain its autonomy or autonomy or control over its internal domestic affairs. Now in 1949, when this treaty is being signed, the India-Bhutan Friendship Treaty, it was the Chinese expansionist concerns over Tibet and adjoining regions that pushed Bhutan to sign the friendship treaty with India. And it is under this treaty with India, and it is under this treaty that Article 1 of the treaty says that India-Bhutan friendship is for all times to come. India-Bhutan friendship is for all times to come. Article 1 of the treaty says that India-Bhutan friendship is for all time to come. Article 2 of the treaty says something important. Article 2 of the treaty says that Bhutan will be guided by India in its foreign policy. Bhutan would be guided by India in its foreign policy, while it would maintain a complete autonomy over its domestic policies or internal affairs. So, that's it. Now, Article 1 and Article 2 of the treaty is what this is what the Article 1 and 2 of the treaty say. Okay, that it would maintain a complete autonomy over its domestic politics or internal affairs, and it would maintain a complete autonomy over its internal affairs. And secondly, the friendship treaty is for all times to come. Now, there are other provisions of the treaty, but this partly was saying that Bhutan was willing to tilt towards India. Why? Primarily to keep the Chinese out. Now, Bhutan, since they never had a border issue with, it's not that, just like India and China had an unsettled border, which eventually led to the 1962 war. Even China and Bhutan have an unsettled border. And that unsettled border has largely been a topic of discussion since the late 1950s itself between Bhutan and China. Okay. Now, but that's one thing. The other thing is that, in 1958, what happened, and this is important, is that Bhutan gave the contract. Bhutan gave the road building contract of a 500-kilometer highway linking Thimphu to the Indian side. So, this contract was given in 1958, and this signified that 1958 is the time when China's expansion into Tibet and consolidation into Tibet is increasing. The persecution of Tibetan Buddhists increased, and 1959 is the time when the Dalai Lama escaped from the Tawang region coming into India. So, it's that time when the tensions in Tibet are already increasing and Bhutan is concerned, and it gives this road building contract to India. At the same point of time, the Indian Prime Minister Modi Nehru paid the first visit to Bhutan. The Indian Prime Minister paid the first visit to Bhutan in an effort to cement the relationship between the two, and paid the first visit to Bhutan to cement the relationship. At the same point of time, India started providing financial assistance to Bhutan's 5-year plans. Financial assistance to Bhutan's 5-year plans, in the sense that Bhutan started their 5-year plans 1957-58 onwards, and India started providing financial assistance to Bhutan from the first 5-year plan. Now you would be like, why on earth is India providing financial assistance to Bhutan? This is also partly a British continuity angle. Britain also was providing a financial assistance. British India was also providing financial assistance to Bhutan even before independence, and India largely signaled that continuity with providing assistance to their 5-year plans 1958 onwards. This was driven by India's desire to do what? To bring Bhutan into a closer economic engagement with whom? India. And to that extent, India also, and even their 11th 5-year plan saw India providing a financial assistance of 5,000 crore rupees. Okay. So in the 11th 5-year plan of Bhutan, even you see that assistance of some 5,000 crores for the 2012 to 2017 period was provided by India to Bhutan. Now it's 5,000 crore rupees. Okay. Now that's there. At the same point of time, 1960s onwards, under Project Dantak, the BRO, the Border Roads Organization, engaged in a vast construction activity where in a vast highway and road construction activity, or in a vast infra construction activity, or road highway construction activity engaged in a vast road or highway construction activity in Bhutan. At the same point of time, including to the extent that we have already constructed roughly around 1,500 kilometers or more network of roads, including their major airport, the Paro airport. So in infrastructure, India provided steadily what? Support. Then in hydropower cooperation, also India started providing support 1967 onward. Okay. 1967 onwards, India supported hydropower projects by providing what? Financial assistance and financial assistance in the form of both grants and loans. Often 60% of the project cost was given as a grant, and 40% was given as a loan. So we were providing financial assistance. We also provided, apart from financial assistance, technical assistance, in the sense that these major construction activities were done by Indian companies. These major hydropower construction activities were done by Indian hydropower companies. That's not all. India also provided an assured buyback offer for 99 years for electricity generated from these projects. So, you see that all of this was some of the initial support in hydropower cooperation also that India provided. At the same point of time, India also provides, yes, the buyback. Buyback thing is that if they are producing the electricity, then once, either they can use it for the domestic market, but if they want to sell, somebody must be willing to buy that electricity. India offered a commitment that for the next 100 years, in some of the projects that started in 1960s, that for the next 100 years, surplus electricity that you want to sell from these projects, India will buy, assured. Because this is very important. You set up a high mega infrastructure project and you don't have an assured buyer, that's a problem. Okay. So in the sense, project viability is very important, not just construction of projects. So to assure viability, India offered financial terms that the cost was not very high for construction or even an assured market for the electricity that is generated in these projects.
Sir, what about BRO?
BRO, Border Roads Organization. Indian जो हमारा border में बनाते हैं, BRO, right? That's BRO, Border Road Organization. So जैसे कि BRO क्या है, आप for example you go to Ladakh. If you go to Ladakh, so why can you drive well in Ladakh, etc.? BRO makes those roads. All border roads infrastructure is largely constructed by BRO, which is a dedicated agency only for this particular task. Okay, that's it. Anything else? Now, so that's there. And apart from this, needless to say that historically they are dependent upon India for transit rights and for their goods or people, both of them, right? That's there. Now, also I told you that they have unresolved border issues. Now, with whom? China. And to that extent, it is in 1986 and 1996, China made an offer of a package deal. Now, what is this offer of a package deal and what is their border dispute? China made an offer of a package deal to Bhutan to settle the boundary question. To settle the boundary question. And what is this package offer? Well, if you look, if you want to look at this package offer, firstly one must understand where the border dispute is. So, right, so that's so if you look at the border dispute is if you look at the border dispute between firstly whom? Bhutan and China is uh, is largely in two places. One is in the north and the other is in the northwest. So firstly, in the north, they have a 900 square kilometer disputed territory between China and Bhutan. And then they have in the west, in the Doklam region, another 400 square kilometer. Another 400 square kilometer of disputed territory. So the 400 square kilometer and the 900 square kilometer both are disputed territories between China and Bhutan. It is this on the western side where you see is that this is what is called as the Chumbi Valley region, right? That it is on the western side that we largely say is this region is the Chumbi Valley region. And this Chumbi Valley region is located close to the Siliguri corridor, or also at times called as a chicken's neck, which is at its narrowest some 13 to 15 kilometers in some areas even 30 kilometer wide. Okay. And India's persistent, firstly, this is the tri-junction area as it is called, because there's Tibet also, or there's China also, there's Bhutan also, and there is India also. Now, it is in this context that one has to firstly know about, this area. This triangular area is called as the Chumbi Valley region. Okay. This triangular area is called the Chumbi Valley region, and in this Chumbi Valley region, you have the Dolam and the Doklam plateau. Okay, so the Dolam and the Doklam plateau, they are adjoining regions in this Chumbi Valley region on Bhutan's western side. Now, China gave an offer to Bhutan in 1986. China gave an offer to Bhutan in 1986 that we can settle this border. You give us, China said to Bhutan that Bhutan must give up its claims over the Dolam or the Doklam Plateau or the Chumbi Valley region, and in return China will recognize Bhutan's claims over the northern territories. So these territories, the 900 square kilometer territories can go to Bhutan, and the 400 square kilometer territory will go to China. If both of them can agree to this package that they recognize each other's claims over these territories, then they can settle their border issue. However, it is in 1986 that Bhutan refused this offer made by China. And in 1996 also, Bhutan again refused a similar offer made by China. Now, this is an important point, primarily why? Because now why did Bhutan refuse this offer? देखिए, पहली बात, China is making them a good offer from Bhutan's perspective, in the sense that firstly, there is a net gain of territory for Bhutan. Secondly, giving up claims on 400 square kilometers of territories on the west is not an immediate security challenge for Bhutan. Okay, their immediate security challenge is what? Antagonizing China. See, militarily there is no question of Bhutan. Militarily there is no question of Bhutan being able to alone resist whom? China. And if China is making a settlement offer for Bhutan to Bhutan, and on its own, Bhutan has neither any capacity nor any reason to, reject a Chinese offer. Come on, China is much more bigger militarily, economically, territorially. I told you, determinants of foreign policy. So in terms of determinants, all determinants are largely in favor of whom? China against Bhutan, and yet Bhutan chooses to reject the package deal offer made by China. Now the implications of this for the Bhutanese are huge, but Bhutanese made this Bhutanese made this or rejected this package deal largely because of whose concerns? India's concerns. Keeping in line with the India-Bhutan Friendship Treaty, given that India has vital concerns over the tri-junction area, that any Chinese troop presence in this tri-junction, if the Chinese troops get a presence in this tri-junction area, they can always, in case of any conflict, cut off the control of India's northeast from India. So to that extent, the tri-junction area dispute is a vital, or any Chinese troop presence in the tri-junction area is a vital security concern for India's control of its northeast. And keeping Indian concerns and sensitivities in mind, Bhutan did not sign the package deal. And this also reflected what? The close India-Bhutan relationship at the highest level. Because since Bhutan, like Nepal, was a monarchy. But there is also a difference. Bhutan is a monarchy where the monarchy enjoys a considerable degree of public support. Not like Nepal. In Nepal, there was a demand for democracy repeatedly. And in this demand for democracy, often the king was criticized for being inefficient and corrupt, where in Nepal. But in Bhutan, the king enjoyed a considerable degree of public support, and the king because the king has a strong domestic position, maintaining good relations with the king was equivalent to maintaining good relations with Nepal, with the people of Bhutan, and maintaining stability in the India-Bhutan relationship. And to that extent, the Bhutanese king largely stood by India in the 1986 and the 96 conflict in the 1986 and 1996 when China offered this package deal. So that's there. So that's the historical context of this. And when we'll see the Doklam crisis, this historical context comes into picture. So needless to say, China made an offer of package deal to Bhutan for settling the boundary question. However, Bhutan rejected the package deal offer largely in compliance largely keeping in mind with Indian concerns over the Chinese troop presence to be made possible in the tri-junction area if Bhutan was to agree to the Chinese proposal. So that's there. Also, then in 2004, also just keep one more thing in mind. That in South Asia, the only country which yet does not have a China's embassy is Bhutan. Bhutan is one country, in 2017 end, when the Belt and Road Initiative major conference was called in Beijing, India did not send its official high level delegation. It sent a lower level official, but did not send a full delegation to the Belt and Road Initiative. Why? Because the Kashgar corridor or CPEC passes through what India claims to be its territories, right? So given its security or sovereignty concerns, India did not send the delegation. But no other country in South Asia or every other country in South Asia did send a delegation except Bhutan. Bhutan, apart from India, did not send a delegation to the BRI conference in 2017. Bhutan is the only other country in South Asia which is yet to establish or yet to allow the Chinese to open a full embassy in Bhutan. All of this signifies that Bhutan has largely been under India's sphere of influence and has not quoted Bhutan the way, for example, the Nepalese side have, or that has not happened in case of Bhutan. And that also signifies largely the closeness of the India-Bhutan relationship. Now in 2004, you see another thing happens is that the king, the Wangchuk's family which rules Bhutan, the monarchy, the Bhutani monarchy signaled a shift in domestic politics towards the establishment of a constitutional monarchy along with a parliamentary democracy. A constitutional monarchy along with a parliamentary democracy is what they said, that the Bhutani monarchy, without any public protest, there were no public protests in Bhutan in 2004, nor were there any allegations of corruptions, but the king voluntarily decided to move towards taking Bhutan towards a constitutional monarchy and a parliamentary democracy. And that is what they said. And soon after this, a new constitution was put in place in 2006-7, and 2007, after the new constitution is put into place, elections were organized. In Bhutan. Elections were organized in Bhutan, and Bhutan's journey towards a parliamentary democracy started after 2007-8 onwards. Now what is important is that even though they established a parliamentary democracy, partly the control of foreign or the final say on foreign policy decisions was yet to stay with the monarchy. The monarchy would even now have the final say over all major foreign policy decisions, was one of the understandings retained in this new constitution also. Remember, it is still a constitutional monarchy, and the constitution gave the final powers on foreign policy to the king. Now, the new political parties which started coming to power, this advent of democracy in Bhutan saw Bhutan diversifying its bilateral relationship with a number of other So Bhutan diversifying its bilateral relationship with a number of other countries, and it increased its bilateral engagement from 23 to 53 countries between 2008 and 2012. So you see Bhutan opening up more to the world and a number of other countries, and increased rapidly from 23 to roughly 53. Okay, and that is a significant jump. At the same point of time, but even though they increased from 23 to 53, who is still not? China. Okay. And that also partly signifies directly or indirectly, said or unsaid, whose concerns? India. That is, the Chinese engagement increases, etc., then that can be a matter of concern for India, was always India's view. And 2012-13 onwards is the time when whom? The Belt and Road Initiative. Now I'll also, one of the topics here obviously in this also is the China factor. Okay. The China factor always looms large on the India-Bhutan relationship. And in 2012, you see, in 2012, the Bhutani Prime Minister on the sidelines of the Rio Plus 20 conference, which is the Rio Climate Change Conference in 2012, on the sidelines of the Rio Plus 20 conference, the Bhutanese Prime Minister on the sidelines of Rio Plus 20 conference spoke to whom? To the Chinese Prime Minister at that point, not the President, but the Chinese Prime Minister at that time in China. And you see that before Xi Jinping, it was Hu Jintao and Xi and Hu were the premiers or the Chinese presidents. But you see the Chinese Prime Minister met whom? The Bhutanese Prime Minister on the sidelines of this Rio Plus 20 conference. However, this meeting happened without the Bhutanese Prime Minister, and this meeting was organized without informing India or taking India into confidence, or nor the details of what was discussed here were shared with India. So in that context, India was supremely concerned that what does this signify? Already Bhutan was diversifying its relationship. Already the Chinese had shown the willingness to start the One Belt, One Road initiative or the Belt and Road initiative. So India was supremely concerned that as China goes ahead with a mega infrastructure and project and drives through the Belt and Road initiative, and as Bhutan looks to diversify its relationship, does this mean that China and Bhutan engagement is going to increase in a pattern or in a manner which can have negative consequences for whom? India. What if after this Bhutan accepts the package deal? Okay, so whatever could be the implications of this closing or this meeting between the heads of states, between the Chinese and the Bhutanese side. So India was supremely concerned. Okay, and India expressed officially its dissatisfaction with Bhutan, that Bhutan had was taking foreign policy decisions without keeping whom? India into confidence. But before this happened, one thing also to know about 2007 is that their friendship treaty was revised. Is the India-Bhutan friendship treaty was revised in 2007. So, that's there. So when we talk about the security cooperation, it is closely linked to the friendship treaty and its revision also. So this friendship treaty and its revision also, in 2007, as Bhutan moved towards democracy and as Bhutan moved towards democracy and signaled a certain amount of change in their domestic political structure, many in Bhutani politics or in domestic politics of Bhutan argued that the friendship treaty with India must be revised. And maybe in 1950s, India was to play a guide. Maybe in 1950s, India was to play a guiding role. What? To guide Bhutan's foreign policy. Bhutan was now developed or was now a state which was capable enough or mature enough to take its own independent decisions in foreign policy. So in 2017, as Bhutan demanded a revision of the Friendship Treaty, revision of the Friendship Treaty, India readily agreed as Bhutan demanded the revision of the Friendship Treaty, India readily agreed and as Bhutan demanded the revision of the Friendship Treaty, India readily agreed, following which the Friendship Treaty was revised, and under this Article 2 of the Friendship Treaty was changed. Article 2 of the Friendship Treaty was revisited in the sense that the 1949 Friendship Treaty was replaced with the 2007 Friendship Treaty, and now Article 2, while Article 2 said in 1949 that Bhutan will be guided by India in its foreign policy decisions, here it said that Bhutan and India are equal friends, and close partners. Bhutan and India are equal friends and close partners, and no elder brother, younger brother, guiding role, nothing. Bhutan and India are equal friends and close partners, and both will be mindful of each other's concerns in the security. Bhutan and India both would be equal friends and close partners, and both will be mindful of each other's concerns in the security arena. Okay. Moreover, both will be mindful of each other's concerns in the security arena, and moreover, you see what they also said was that in terms of this relationship, one of the important things that they also said in this Friendship Treaty was that moreover, both sides would not allow the use of their territories in any manner harmful to the national security, and interest both sides would not allow the use of territories in a manner harmful to the national interest, national security, and the interests of the other. That is something that they point out, that that both will not do anything that would adversely affect the security interest of one another. Now, so we had revised the Friendship Treaty. India's argument was that we don't have any problems in revising the Friendship Treaty anyways. We have never invoked Article 2 of the Friendship Treaty explicitly. India never invoked Article 2 of the Friendship Treaty of 1949 explicitly. That India said that Bhutan must take a decision, that this is what will be the decision of Bhutan's foreign policy. So India said that we have never invoked Article 2 of the 1949 treaty anyways, nor we have any intention of invoking it in the future. And if Bhutan wishes to renegotiate the treaty, we are open to renegotiation as well. And India renegotiated the treaty, largely addressing Bhutan's concerns over its sovereignty over its foreign policy affairs. So that's something that was done. Now in 2012, when this meet happens, between the Bhutanese Prime Minister and the Chinese Prime Minister, this 2012 meeting evoked much concern in New Delhi. So, and to the extent the 2012 meet between Bhutan and China evoked much concerns in Delhi. And then what happened? Elections were due in 2012. Elections were due in 2012. And when these elections happened in 2012 in Bhutan, India, in the end of 2012 and 13, in the beginning of 2013, elections were due in Bhutan. And as elections were due in Bhutan, the ruling party was contesting the election. And it is at this time that just 2 weeks before the election, India stopped abruptly the supply of subsidized LPG and oil to Bhutan. So just like you get subsidized oil and LPG, etc. So even India supplies subsidized LPG, etc. or at subsidized rates, refined petroleum as well as LPG to Bhutan. And 2 weeks before the election, India abruptly called off the supply of these, or stopped the supply of these essential commodities. What did it lead to? The price rise and shortages and price rise in Bhutan. Many argued that this was India's way of expressing displeasure with what? The Bhutan seeking a rapprochement with China or getting too friendly with China. So this was India using the stick against whom? Bhutan. And this was seen by many as a very short-sighted move. That using the stick against Bhutan was something that would lead to accusations that India is being the big brother or the bully. And though on paper it says it is okay with Bhutan diversifying its foreign policy or making foreign policy decisions, keeping its interest in mind, in reality it is not. The time when the Bhutanese really are trying to talk to the Chinese, that is the time when India has concerns. And India's abruptly calling off these subsidies 2 weeks before the election was showing India's discontent. And this, many argued, was even in Indian foreign policy establishment, many argued was not a very great foreign policy move. Because if we have decades of goodwill, India should not give away the goodwill because this stick policy will A, not work, and B, will be counterproductive for India's image in South Asia. And to that extent, this decision was, but nonetheless, what happened? As a result of this decision, fuel shortages and high prices happened in Bhutan 2 weeks before the elections, and this partly or significantly, we don't know, but definitely did contribute to the defeat of the ruling party. The ruling party lost the 2013 elections, and this was in a way, many argued, India's interference in the domestic politics of Bhutan. Okay, that's also something which has happened at this point of time. So there was a lot of this concern. Now after this you have what? So India was accused of enforcing, or India enforced a blockade on fuel supplies to Bhutan 2 weeks before the election. Which led to high prices and the ruling party lost power. and the ruling party lost power in Bhutan. Now, and following this, you have what? Now, that's not all. China has been steadfastly increasing its presence in South Asia. Also, in general, has increased its engagement at the global level with the Belt and Road Initiative since 2013 onwards. Now, it is in 2008, it is, you see, where in 2017, you see the whole Doklam standoff. It's a 73 days standoff between the 73-day standoff between India and China, right? Now, what is this standoff about? This standoff is about the Tri-Junction area. Now, the immediate reason for this standoff was what? That the immediate reason for this standoff is primarily this, that the immediate reason for this standoff was that the Chinese have been doing, or Chinese have been doing road construction activities. The Chinese have been doing the road construction activities into this region. Okay, they've been constructing wide roads, all-weather wide roads into this region. They are also constructing some buildings here, and we know that the disputed, this activity, some of this construction activity is going to pass through a number of disputed regions between whom? Between China and Bhutan. So, some of this construction activity is going to pass through this disputed territory between China and Bhutan. Now, Bhutan registered its protest, but Bhutan did not deploy any troops. Bhutan registered its protest against the Chinese construction activities in these areas because this is a disputed territory, and in 1986 and 1996, when this package deal was offered and Bhutan rejected the package deal, at that time it was said also both the sides agreed to a commitment that no side will unilaterally try to change the position through the use of force, or on the ground level no side will try to unilaterally change the position. But the Chinese road or construction activities in the region is amounting to this unilateral change that it is trying to do. It is trying to change or create new facts on ground. Okay. Now, India said what? That Indian troops are placed on this side of the border. And Indian troops are also, there are a few thousand Indian troops, some 1500 to 2000 Indian troops, which are often always placed in Bhutan also, okay, to provide military training and to Bhutan. So that can also be used, but Indian troops were placed on this side of the border in the Tri-Junction area. That is the time as the Chinese troops advanced, the Indian troops also advanced, and they also crossed the border. They also crossed the border, and now as they cross the border, they are they moved from the Indian side into this disputed Tri-Junction area. So what is happening, that you have the Indian troops on the one side, and the Chinese troops on the other. So the Indian troops on the one side and the Chinese troops. Okay, let me use a different color. So the Indian troops are placed here and the Chinese troops are also placed there. Where are Bhutani troops? What will Bhutan do, sir? Where will Bhutan will place its troops? There is no question of Bhutan placing its troops. Bhutan is not messing around with China. Okay, so Bhutan is not pushing its troops anywhere into this conflict. India, on the other hand, deputed its troops to enter into this area. Now, so India's concern was that if Bhutan, cedes control of this area, then that is a negative consequence for India. And to that extent, Indian troops intervened. So the Chinese said that India is entering into Chinese territory. The Chinese argued that Indian troops are entering into whose territories? Chinese territories. Because the Chinese claim this territory. India said we are not entering into Chinese territories. We are supporting Bhutan. Because we are a friend of Bhutan, and Bhutan, we are providing military assistance to Bhutan as a part of our friendship treaty with Bhutan. Okay. So India said we are intervening on behalf of Bhutan as a part of our treaty obligations with Bhutan. China saying that this is Chinese territory, and India has no locus standi in the dispute between China and Bhutan. India has no reason to be present in this region. Even if it is a dispute, it is between China and Bhutan. India has no reasons to be present. But India's argument was that India has a reason to be present. One is because of Bhutan, Bhutan's interest and India's treaty obligations to Bhutan. But another is because of India's own vital security concerns that emanate from this tri-junction area. And in the National Security Advisor level or the Special Representative level talks, India and China since 2003 have a special representative mechanism for border talks, where India appoints one dedicated person to talk to the Chinese on the border question, and so do the Chinese. Historically, since 2003, it has been India's National Security Advisor who has actually led the Indian delegation on border talks with China. So in 2012, the border talks with China, between China and India, had come to one consensus, that no side will try to settle the matter with the use of force or unilaterally change the facts on ground. So India said that you are changing facts on grounds by creating new highways, etc. Now why is this highway business important? Because the Chinese can move in troops or tanks, etc. rapidly through this region if they construct the road or highway. So India's argument was this, and both the sides' troops were facing off each other in this region. However, what did Bhutanis say? When India said that Bhutan, the Bhutani troops, when India said that Bhutan is intervening primarily on whose request and to provide whom assistance? Bhutan. Bhutan never openly, either publicly said that it had asked for Indian assistance, nor did it deny that it had asked for Indian assistance. Bhutan did not want to antagonize China, even though it continued to largely stay with India on the issue. But the tensions were rising, and that is why there was an immense pressure on Bhutan that, that from the Chinese side, there was an immense pressure on Bhutan that it should, either tell Indian troops to withdraw, or in one way or the other, Indian troops must be told to withdraw from the region. Okay, and there was, if Bhutan would issue a statement that it does not require Indian troops in its territory, then there is no locus for India to intervene in this question. So there was a pressure on Bhutan, but Bhutan did not give in to any such pressures and largely stayed silent as Indian and Chinese troops faced off each other. Finally, what happened after the 70-day standoff? you know, before there were talks going at the political level between the Indian side and the Chinese side, and then there were the prime ministerial level talks that happened in an informal summit in Wuhan. That's called the Wuhan Summit. And in these talks happened, and we'll talk about that. But after the 73-day standoff, and I'll give you the handout, so usme you'll have those details. After this 73-day standoff, before the BRIC summit, who withdrew? Before the BRIC summit, both Indian and Sushma Swaraj, the Indian foreign minister, informed the Indian parliament that both Indian and Chinese troops had disengaged and moved back from the disputed site. So, firstly, had disengaged and moved back from the disputed site. So, what were they doing during this 73-day standoff when Indian troops and Chinese troops were facing off each other? What are they doing, sir? Nothing, sir. Indian troops have put in their tent. The Chinese troops have put in their tent. Chinese bought their JCB or bulldozer to make roads. India said, no, no, you can't do construction here. Then what did Chinese troops said? Thoda bahut dono ne ek dusre ko haath vaat mara. That is what, if you see the real footage, baki bas. Nobody fired a shot, neither the Chinese side fired a shot nor the Indian side fired a shot. They put in their tents, so we put in our tents, 100 meters away from each other. So yahan hum baithe, yahan wo baithe, aur 70 days ek dusre ko dekh rahe. Okay. And after 70 days, we said that disengagement happened and both the sides withdrew their troops. How much? They are saying that both the sides moved back from the disputed side. How much did they move back from the disputed side was never told in the parliament. 100 meters, 200 meters, or they went back on the other side of the mountain and we also came back on our side of the mountain. No details were given. And so that's it. So the standoff was largely called off. And after this, we'll see that in 2018, 2017 and in 2018, there was the Wuhan Summit, which was an informal summit between India and China, and where both the sides said that they would take concrete steps to lower tensions. So they would take concrete steps to lower tensions in the region. And resolve their disputes peacefully. Okay. Now, so the Indian troops also backed off and the Chinese troops also backed off. And since then there has been not much reportage in the Indian media. However, a Wall Street article and the US spy satellite pictures showed that the Chinese have merely moved back a few hundred meters, and even though have moved back only a few hundred meters, and their building activities of constructing these buildings, etc., what will they do in these buildings, sir? Keep their troops. Okay. So their building construction activities in this region have continued. If not the road construction activities, the building of or the construction of buildings, etc., has continued in the region. And the Indian troops also have only backed off a couple of 100 meters. So it's not that the issue has actually been settled as of now, and both the sides continue to remain present in the region. So that is the whole question of the Doklam standoff. Now what does overall, however, what does this signify is that Bhutan has largely stayed with India. However, and this even after the Wuhan summit, etc., 2018 there are next elections in Bhutan, and in 2018 again elections were held, and the new prime minister who came to power was Shering Lote, and Prime Minister Shering Lote's first visit also happened to India, and including after that, after the Doklam standoff, Shering Lote's first visit happened to India, and also the Bhutanese king first visit was also to Bhutanese king's first visit was also to India after the Doklam standoff. Both the things signified what? That India-Bhutan relationship continues to be strong. However, India-Bhutan relationship continues to be strong. However, the recent round of tensions, etc., had led to many arguing that Bhutan has resisted till now the package offer, but it is not so sure how long it will be in a position to do so. Also, if Bhutan has till now not established full diplomatic relations with China, there is no guarantee that this will remain the case in the future also. Many experts argue that Bhutan will inevitably establish full diplomatic relations with China by giving them an embassy in Bhutan. It is only a matter of time. And what should be India's position? They have argued that India should not try to use a coercive approach against Bhutan. And if Bhutan is an independent country, it is likely to pursue an independent foreign policy, which will involve for Bhutan's own vital interest to maintain good relations with whom? China. And to that extent, if Bhutan does give an embassy to China, etc., India must not use a coercive approach, the one it used in 2013. Okay, 12-13. India should not do that. Rather, India should continue to increase its engagement with Bhutan. The simple thing is, you can't tell Bhutan and Nepal and other South Asian countries not to engage China. What you can do is to engage your neighbors more proactively. That is the logic. If you see, would India like that if US tells India not to engage with Iran or with Russia? No. India would say we would want to pursue our own independent foreign policy. So, if sovereignty is something that India values, then India's South Asian neighbors also value. And they may also seek to pursue good relations with or closer engagement with China. So, even if as they pursue closer engagement with China, India need not sit back. Rather, India must continue to keep these countries in a closer engagement with whom? India. So as to ensure that even if the Chinese are present, the Chinese presence does not adversely affect whom? India. Okay. So Nepal may, for example, engage the Chinese, but we must do our infrastructure projects in Nepal, or our people-to-people contacts, infrastructure, culture, geography. All of these projects must be pursued with diligence, and that will ensure that whatever Chinese presence is there, it will not be so much so as to overshadow India's interest in these countries. Is this point clear? Okay. The answer is never to tell India's neighbor not to engage China. The answer is to increase India's engagement and ensure that whatever Chinese engagement happens, it does not adversely affect India. Okay. So that's there, and a part of and we'll discuss that, and partly there is, if this is the Doklam issue, the other issue is of hydropower cooperation. The other issue is of the hydropower cooperation, and in terms of hydropower cooperation, देखिए, in terms of the hydropower cooperation, in 2006, India has actually done a number of hydropower projects, and their names are very difficult to remember Pung Tang Shu, this Chu, that Chu. It's kind of very difficult to remember those names. But when we talk about their hydropower projects, one of the things is that Bhutan's biggest hydropower, biggest exports are what? Hydropower. Almost 70% of its total export is only one commodity, and that is hydropower. Just like many a number of Gulf economies export oil and that is their main commodity, their economy is also largely driven by a single commodity, and that is hydropower. And you see that a number of projects have been done. For example, in 2006, even in 1960s and 70s, the Tala hydropower project was there. In 1960s there were other projects. In 2006, India completed the Tala hydropower project, which is a 1020 megawatt project. India completed the Tala hydropower project, which is a 1020 megawatt project in Bhutan with an assured buyback agreement, with an assured power purchase agreement. Then since then, in 2006, India and Bhutan also signed an agreement by which they would increase cooperation in hydropower to the extent that there would be some 20,000 megawatts of electricity generation in India by 2020. They would increase the cooperation in hydropower and there would be some 20,000 megawatts electricity generation in India by 2000, electricity generation, not to 20,000, 10,000 megawatts in Bhutan by 2020. So this was, the kind of target that was made, that India will assist in the setting up of more of these hydropower projects and they can sell the surplus electricity to India. Okay, that's what was the logic was. And to the extent that, as I told you, that hydropower export almost constitutes 70% of their total export, which largely goes to whom? Whose largely the target is India. So that's there. However, between 2006 to 2018, there are a number of other ongoing projects. Okay, and these ongoing projects are, these ongoing projects are the 1200. There are a few ongoing projects. The ongoing projects are the 1200 megawatt Punat Sangchu, Punat Sangchu 1 and the 720 megawatt Punat Sangchu 2 project. So these are two major big other projects which are currently ongoing but are yet to be completed. How close are we, sir, to 2020? Almost there, right? So these two other projects are ongoing, but these ongoing projects have certain issues from the Bhutani side that need to be, there are certain issues from the Bhutani side that need to be addressed, or there are certain issues or concerns of concerns of the Bhutani side that need to be addressed by whom? By India. First, sir, delays. The most of the infrastructure, most of the what? All the contracts for these construction, hydropower construction projects have gone to whom? Indian companies. So you see the delays in completion of projects have been witnessed by Indian companies engaged, such as whether they are government owned or private owned, whichever Indian companies are engaged, L&T or other Indian companies also, all have been responsible for delays in completion of these projects, and this has led to what? This has led to what? Time and cost overruns. Which have increased the cost of the projects. Second, sir, what is the issue? That's one issue. The second issue is the loan is to grant ratio needs to be rationalized to address Bhutan's concerns. The loan is to grant ratio needs to be rationalized to address Bhutan's concerns, in the sense the new projects like the Punat Sangchu 1 and 2 projects, these projects have been sanctioned. The newer projects like Punat Sangchu 1 and 2, the new projects have been sanctioned with what? With a 40:60 grant is to loan ratio. So while the older projects were granted with a 60:40, grant is to loan, now we have decreased it from earlier it was what? 60:40 of a grant is to loan. Now they have flipped it in the sense that they've decreased the grant component and they've increased the loan component. Though the loans are at a relatively low interest rate, but nonetheless they are loans. And when there are cost overruns, then the cost of the project increases. Matlab their loan component will also increase. So that is what is their other concern with the delay in the implementation of the projects, and also the loan and the grant ratio needs to be rationalized. And third, another issue is what? India earlier in 2006, India was still a power deficit country, but today India is a power surplus country. We generate enough electricity for our own domestic needs. Now if you are wondering that why you still have power outages, not in Delhi obviously, in UP में तो अभी भी होता ही है थोड़ा बहुत, or from Bihar etc. wherever many other areas you have power outages in rural areas. Why are those power outages there? Is because of transmission and distribution network weakness. Okay, so वो load ज़्यादा होता है, गर्मी आपने सबने कूलर चला लिया या AC चला लिया तो फिर ट्रांसफार्मर उड़ गया, अभी ट्रांसफार्मर उड़ गया तो अभी लाइट नहीं आएगा. सो टू दे डू लोड शेडिंग, तो गर्मी है आप सबने एसी चला दिया तो सबका साथ सबका विकास, लोड शेडिंग, लाइट किसी क्या नहीं आएगी. फिर एनी यू हैव योर इन्वर्टर तो इन्वर्टर चलाइए, रात को आएगी अभी लाइट वापस. ओके, दैट इज दैट. सो नाउ the third issue is what? That India has become a power surplus country. So the question is, if future projects are going to be commissioned, is India going to buy that electricity? If India is not going to give a assurance of buying that electricity, then why on earth are they producing this electricity? Whom can they sell? They can't sell this electricity to China. China का grid कहीं और है, दूसरी direction में है. China is thousands of kilometers away. The grid network is not going to be extended to Bhutan to buy electricity from Bhutan. Arey, cost of electricity it will become so high. What is the point? So Bhutan is not going to sell the electricity to China. India is power surplus. What that means is that Bhutan must get a grid connectivity to whom? Other areas like Bangladesh. Okay. Or even to Nepal. If the Nepalis don't get their act together, they can buy electricity from Bhutan also. So the whole idea of electricity grid, okay, linking Bhutan to Bangladesh or even to other areas in the SAARC region, that is something which is which can be done. And at the same point of time, slowly but surely, Bhutan has to diversify from what? Away from hydroelectricity. देखिए, you should not never be a single commodity economy. If you become a single commodity economy, so Venezuela partly is considered this a recent example, but numerous such examples have been there. कि when oil prices are high, so you are going high, but oil prices collapse, so you also collapse. Now I know that that's not the only reason for the Venezuelan crash, but that's one of the reasons. Okay. So in the sense that if they are only going to remain dependent on hydropower, that is not a very wise move. So their other issue is that Bhutan energy exports or need grid connectivity with Bangladesh and Nepal through India. Bhutan's energy exports need grid connectivity with Bangladesh and Nepal through India. Bhutan's energy exports need grid connectivity with Bangladesh and Nepal through India, and with Bangladesh and Nepal through India. And also to access the power markets or to access the electricity markets through a SAARC electricity grid, through a SAARC or a BBIN. Electricity grid. And also Bhutan needs to diversify its economy away from hydropower. Bhutan needs to diversify its economy away from hydropower to what? Tourism. And what? Agri business. The Bhutanis are very touchy about what? Environment. 60% of their forest cover, 50% of their forest cover, whatever, has to be mandatorily maintained. That's one thing. But they're very touchy about their environment in the sense that they don't want to do what? FDI in manufacturing sector. They don't want, they are not going to give permission for vast housing projects, vast manufacturing projects, etc. The kind of Vikas we are used to. Sir, Vikas has become such a hollow word, not just because the Prime Minister has used it more often and delivered nothing. But even if he delivers, the kind of Vikas that you see in wherever you go, sir, in North India, it is always visible. You go anywhere around Delhi, you go to Gurgaon. Gurgaon has achieved Vikas. It looks like what? A dump yard, tall buildings, no trees, dust, no rains. Water depletion, ground level water depletion. Now you go beyond Gurgaon. Then comes Manesar, Bhiwadi. Are jahan jaye, you see there is more and more Vikas happening. More roads and highways being made, more trees being cut, more large residential buildings being made, more dust, more pollution. So Vikas is happening of a certain kind which the BJP has nothing to do with. It's like the BJP and the Congress, whoever they do, they follow the same model. And that is the model which leads to more environmental destruction. BJP and Congress have nothing to say different on almost any issue, including on environment. Okay, but their model is environmentally very sensitive. So they're not going to do FDI, manufacturing or anything of that sort. They're only saying in terms of tourism and agri-business. Tourism may be concept tourism. It's likely eco-tourism and high net worth individual tourism. अरे इन्हें नहीं चाहिए कि आप आ गए अपना झोला उठा के. That you come with your jhola and you make it the next kasol. They don't want that to happen. So they are looking for attracting tourists, but of a certain category of tourists who are, their accommodations, if you go to Bhutan, accommodations are not cheap. If you go to Nepal, Nepal is a cheap tourist destination. Bhutan is not a cheap tourist destination. Why? Because they don't give permission for construction of hotels, etc. very easily. Either there are only big 5-star hotels, which are very few, or it's ecotourism, domestic housing. There also the rate is not less. Okay, so they don't want too many number of tourists. They want only those who are, who give them significant economic earning with less footfall. Okay, that's there. Because the more number of people visit, the more is the requirement of food, water, sanitation, all those requirements. Pressure on the land increases. So that's it. They need to diversify away from hydropower towards tourism. The largest number of tourists come from where? The largest number of tourists come from which country? China. China is providing the largest number of tourists. अरे हमारे वाले गरीब हैं सर, बाली जाते हैं वो. Bali etc. is cheaper, sir. Bali, Bangkok, Bali, these are cheaper destinations than there. So the largest number of tourists are coming from China. What does this mean? That India needs to increase its footprint in this sector, and they also have the Buddhist connection. So because there's a Buddhist connection also, a number of Chinese tourists come. India needs to increase its footprint in the tourism sector also in Bhutan, and India must be ready for that day when Bhutan will establish relations with China. And rather than using a coercive approach, India should prepare for that day proactively by increasing its engagement in Bhutan or continuing its strong engagement in Bhutan. We also give assistance to their 5-year plan. That assistance idea has continued. Okay. The Bhutanese also buy and sell goods to India, buy goods from India and sell goods to India. So for example, when Bhutanese take loans from India, they take it in which currency? Rupee. When the Bhutanese pay India back, they pay in which currency? Rupee. So rupee is the common currency of trade between India and Bhutan. And with rupee comes what? Demonetization. Okay. The Nepalis have this huge outstanding concern that I did not tell you yesterday. But see, Nepali citizens work in India. Nepali currency, Indian rupee is accepted in Nepal. So Indian rupee is accepted in Nepal. So a number of people who received wages, etc., they sent their savings where? In Indian rupee back to their houses in Nepal. So वहाँ पे these people deposited their rupee in where? The Nepali banks. Indian rupee in the Nepali banks. So they had those deposits, and then India did demonetization. Arey, what happens to those rupees? Now that matter has yet to be settled. There have been many round of talks. Now the point is, that's the catch. The catch is that if India says, okay, you give us the rupee, you can transfer the amount to India, and India will provide the adjoining amount in the new denominations. If India will provide in new denominations the same exact amount of rupee, then क्या हो सकता है? अभी भी अगर किसी के पास रुपया जमा है, अभी भी अगर आपके पास पुरानी करेंसी पड़ी है, तो उसे कहाँ ले जाएं? नेपाल. Okay, and through some back channel, etc., put it in a Nepali bank. That day, when India will settle the matter with Nepal, that is the time when your old currency अभी भी एक मौका है. Okay, that is there. So, sir, मौके अनेक हैं, ढूंढने वाले पे होता है. Okay, so that is it. They have a concern कि their people have deposited their money earned from India in Indian currency in Nepali banks. Their money is dead. होते हुए भी नहीं. Their money is dead, which is kept in those banks in the older Indian currency. So that's partly a concern. Nepal has at the highest level, at the prime ministerial level, expressed this concern. Indian side has had 3-4 rounds of talks with Nepal. With Bhutan, that's not that much of a concern because they pay India back. The trade currency with them is the trading currency with India is largely what? Rupee. But it is not that Bhutani people come to India seeking employment in large numbers. Sir, one set of chowkidars are the MLAs and MPs. The other set of chowkidars come from where? Nepal. They don't come from Bhutan. Okay. They don't come from Bhutan. Why? Because the Bhutani population is well educated, well fed, well clothed. They don't need your chowkidari. They don't want to do, sir, chowkidari. Indian MLAs and MPs want to do chowkidari. The next is Nepali population because they are looking for employment opportunities. The Bhutanese are also looking for employment opportunities, but not in India. They look beyond India, primarily because they are well educated and they have a good standard of living. They don't need to earn your 6,000-7,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees in Indian currency and live in such a. देखिए, जो पहाड़ में खुली सांस हवा लेता हो, उसको आप दिल्ली में आए बोले चौकीदारी करिए और आपको 10,000 रुपए मिलेगा. They don't want to do any of it. So that is there. So and there, though unemployment is partly a problem in Bhutan, but not so extreme that they have to come to work in India. So the rupee problem is not really big with Bhutan, but it is with Nepal. Done. Now, any doubts on India-Bhutan relationship? Anything that you want to ask? Then we'll start. Motor vehicle agreement. So, when we talk about motor vehicle agreement, ma'am will discuss with you SARC. Okay, SARC connectivity. Okay, or SARC as a whole, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. That is something that ma'am will discuss with you. And in that, one of the things also has been that because Pakistan has a number of times opposed any closer regional integration efforts by India, India has said that if it is Nepal, if there is Bhutan, if there is Bangladesh, India said that why can't we start a sub-regional cooperation linking, linking Nepal, India, Bhutan and Bangladesh together through a regional connecting the highway infrastructure, etc. Now, ma'am's not discussed Bangladesh with you, right? So I'll discuss Bangladesh with you. Now, one of the things is that Bangladesh can give a huge transit right to India in Northeast also, that's another thing. But one of the things is, if you link the highways, etc. of these regions, it will allow a better movement of goods from one region to another. In the sense that if the Bhutanese want to do agro business with whom? Bangladesh, they can do so. And it is a desirable move for India also, because the better integrated these smaller countries are with whom? India. The more assured India can be that as and when the Chinese presence increases in these countries, India need not be too afraid of the increasing Chinese presence. So the Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal corridor, the BBIN corridor idea is itself a useful idea to pursue. There is no problem in that, and there is a certain degree of movement going on in this direction. However, Bhutan has not yet ratified the agreement. Why? Because if they want to be a part of this Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal corridor, they will have to widen their roads or establish 4-lane highways, widen their roads infrastructure. Widening roads, broadening roads or constructing new highways involves what? Cutting trees. They don't want to cut their trees. Inka vikas ho hi nahi pa raha hai, right? So that is there, sir. They're environmentally very touchy. Their parliament has refused to ratify without a proper environmental impact assessment, and without that they said that unless we are convinced that the project and the environmental costs associated with the project can be compensated for, this is perhaps not the right time for them to join the whole road corridor project. देखिए दिल्ली में क्या होता है, रोड चौड़ी पे चौड़ी हुए जा रही है, पेड़ कटे जा रहे हैं, रोड ही रोड है सर हर जगह, right? So that's the problem, with Delhi. The pressure on the land is so much, not because of population. We are used to thinking that it is population. India's problem is population. Population is so much, and that is why all of this is happening. Actually, you see a lot of this highway construction, etc., or especially road widening in cities. Road widening in cities is happening why? To accommodate whom? Two-wheelers and four-wheelers, not people. If you focus more on public infrastructure and less on private vehicles, road widening will not be that big a necessity in urban areas. Okay? And those cities where they have a clear mandate ki nahi karna hai road widening at the cost of cutting trees, those are the cities which will remain livable. And so there are very few livable cities in India, or likely to remain livable for a long period of time. Ab jahan jaye yahi kahani hai. Okay, that's there. And because public transport is weak, you are incentivizing private transport, and that involves, if private transport means you need more roads, wider roads, highways, flyover, पेड़ नहीं है आजकल, flyover के नीचे ही छाएं मिलती है. Okay. Next thing is also there, sir, smart people are living. Where? In all urban centers in India. So metro pillar you go, or any highway pillar, तो उसके around वो छोटे छोटे bonsai plants are there. Do you see those bonsai plants, right? वो पेड़ नहीं है तो pillar के around ही they'll keep small, लगा देते हैं घास फूस, तो ये पेड़ है. Some people say this will tackle climate change. Other people say it will reduce temperature in cities. Other people say it will tackle air pollution. I am just amazed. First at stupidity. B, at not looking at the real solution. The real solution is to have trees, not to make concrete pillars and then grow bonsai plants on own. That are vertical forest we are growing. Are horizontal grow kar lo. Vertical mein kya hai? And actually there is no study which proves that you do this, that you cut trees, you make concrete pillars, then grow bonsai plants on it. That will, tackle air pollution and all these things in cities. Sir, useless piece. And this has got nothing to do with the BJP, sir. This is representing Indian middle class, which is nothing but fools. And thus, you get the kind of schemes. Odd even. क्या हो रहा है odd even से? कुछ नहीं होना odd even air pollution. No solution. Now, next thing is now the next thing to discuss. We are discussing. Is this much clear? Any other doubts still? Anything you want to ask? Yes.
Like Bhutan and Nepal were protectorates of Britishers. Then why did Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel did try to annex these roads?
Annex कैसे कर लेंगे? Protectorate is one thing. They were independent, but under their overall guidance. Guidance doesn't mean that they were a part of the British. Never administered these areas. If British never administered these areas, the Indian, after independence, the question was only of those princely states, directly or indirectly administered by British, or which recognize the British crown as their ultimate ruler. That was not the case with Nepal or with Bhutan. They still were ruled by their domestic rulers who did not recognize the overall suzerainty of the British crown. So there is no question of them joining India or joining Pakistan or anything of that sort. And India annexing, annexing these areas. What's the point of India annexing these areas? In the sense, the only state that India ultimately was, if you were to say annexed, it's not really annexation, but partly under some circumstances, is Sikkim. And Sikkim's joining of the Indian Union happened in a number of other circumstances. And that was something that even the Chinese did not accept. China recognized Sikkim as a part of India only in 2005. Before that, China did not even recognize Sikkim as a part of India. And India in 1949-50 is, sir, what? A poor country. Economically, militarily, what? Weak. We have one conflict with Pakistan, on the other side with China. Abhi aap bole ki inko bhi kha jao. If India would have tried to militarily dominate these areas, they like Nepal or Bhutan. Nepal and Bhutan would have perceived what? A security threat from India, and India would have pushed these countries into whose lap? China. धैर्य जरूरी है. तो क्या करना है उनको अनेक्स करके? What is the point? Why, sir? Why?
Because state is like parasite, which ultimately
Growing of states today does not happen by physical annexation. Has China annexed $11 trillion economy, sir? Has China annexed any state? Not now, not ever, not forever. China doesn't want physical annexation. US annexed any state? Can say nahi. Has annexed any state? Are India annexed Sikkim? Has USA annexed? Regime change को आप annexation नहीं कह सकते.
like they have so many military commands all over the globe.
So we also are doing. We have with Sabang naval base. We have in Oman. We are getting another Dokkum naval base in Oman. Naval bases and annexation is not the same thing. Naval bases and annexation is not the same thing. The Chinese are increasing their naval bases. The Americans have their naval bases. We are also increasing naval bases. Today, the nature of economies has changed. Economies no longer derive their growth, or countries do not seek to grow merely or by territorial annexation. Why? Because territorial annexation comes with an immediate threat of war with other parties, and fighting wars is an expensive affair. Countries seek to grow, that's true, and seek to increase their influence. How? Not by military means, which is a means of the last resort often for most of the developed economies, but primarily by what? Economic engagement. So through what? Through free trade agreements, through giving loans, through giving conditional loans, or through signing free trade agreements, or establishing regional economic integration. So IMF and World Bank, they give conditional loans, and these their condition is what? Open up your market, that is when we'll give you a loan. So most countries today and powerful states today are not trying to do territorial capture, they are trying to do economic capture, often through a trading regime which benefits them, rather than actually going on to capture territories. Okay, if that would have been the case, then तो फिर क्या है, चाइना बोलेगी खा जाते ताइवान इधर से, नीचे से वियतनाम, इधर से सेंट्रल एशिया, लैंडलॉक्ड कंट्रीज सेंट्रल एशिया, लेट्स ईट ऑल ऑफ देम अप. They don't want to. Fighting wars is a rare thing, is expensive, comes with its own set of disadvantages. Fighting wars is never the first instrument of resort when in a heavily globalized and industrialized economy. If you fight wars, what happens to Chinese investments in other countries? If China and US tomorrow fight a war over Taiwan, what happens to their investments in each other's countries? All these matters are very complicated. What has changed is that time in the what has changed is your time of the kingdoms that used to be before. Ki, you have one kingdom, the French Empire or the British, and their navies are fighting with each other. Wo zamana chala gaya. With globalization, with industrialization, you see, rather than with globalization and industrialization, they are more interested in avoiding conflict, military conflict, yet increasing state power through economic means. Doesn't mean the military has become irrelevant, but wars today are not fought to capture land. They are, even when wars are fought, they are limited wars. You live in a nuclear age today. That era is gone, sir, after World War II. Most wars have never been fought between global powers or major powers. Why? Because all of them have nuclear weapons. So this whole instinct of fighting wars, aisa nahi hai that, capturing areas. If capturing areas would have been the solution, the foreign policy ka simple hota. Every big state would have eaten the small state up. There would have been no small states in the world. Why is there a Maldives? Why is there a Mauritius? कौन है भाई Maldives का, कौन है? खा जाए इंडिया. कल lot of people were saying कि सर Maldives है, क्या है, Maldives is trying to court China and using it to balance India, तो India should go and eat Maldives. कितना है? यहीं से 700 किलोमीटर दूर है, चला जाएगा, हमारा नेवी वैसे ही वहां है. उनको बोलेंगे चलो भाई हो गया तुम्हारा. So capturing territories is a very brute way and is not and often a counterproductive way, because it may push these smaller neighbors in the hands of others. Okay, that's it. Anything else? Okay, next is Maldives. छोटी सी country अभी खत्म कर देते हैं. Okay, Maldives पे भी question आ सकता है. Okay, because the recent chain of events etc. in Maldives which has been going on. Maldives तो बहुत ही छोटा है. After Maldives I'll give you a break, then we'll start with next topic, either Sri Lanka or Bangladesh. Okay, two more topics we have to discuss in South Asia, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. Okay, now देखिए Maldives में मैं घर खरीदना चाहता हूँ. okay, आप में से घर ना भी खरीदना, किराए पे ही ले लें. वीजा फ्री ट्रैवल सर Maldives, कभी भी जा सकते हैं, बहुत सस्ती टिकट है जाने की, रहना बहुत महंगा है. गोवा, it's as cheap as going to Goa ticket wise. When once you go there, then it is expensive because it's a very land starved country. Okay, now and it is one of the few countries with which India has a visa free travel arrangement, where Indians don't need visa and the Maldivians also don't need any visa. Okay, so it's good as going to Goa. Okay, but Maldives also is a hotspot tourist destination for Europeans and for whom? Chinese. तो यूरोपियन टूरिस्ट भी हैं वहां, चाइनीज टूरिस्ट भी हैं, इंडियंस भी हैं, और यूरोपियन और चाइनीज कौन है? अमीर, और हम कौन हैं? गरीब. So most tourist destinations there are expensive, uh, but nonetheless. So India Maldives relation. What kind of question can be asked is, in India Maldives kuch nahi hai dada. The only question that they'll ask you is about India Maldives relation, the recent changes in Maldives and its implication for India Maldives relation. So the question is about India Maldives and whom? China. It's largely that is what the question is about. India Maldives relation, the Chinese presence in Maldives and its implication for India Maldives relationship. So firstly, we'll get into a brief historical discussion, background and the relevance of Maldives for India. And the relevance of whom? Maldives for India. Now, firstly, देखिए, location wise, Maldives is located where? Location wise, Maldives is located just 700 kilometers from Lakshadweep. And the northernmost, Maldives is a collection of some 1100 islands. Most of these islands are what? Uninhabited. Or most of these islands are uninhabited. इनमें कोई नहीं रहता. So most of these islands are uninhabited, and the northern section of Maldives islands are very close to Lakshadweep. Some of the uninhabited islands are close to some 200 kilometers, close to Lakshadweep. Okay, and to that extent, they are very close to India. 700 kilometers from Lakshadweep Islands and some 1200 kilometers from whom? Some 1200 kilometers from India's coast, Kerala and all these areas, the land border, from India's land border. Okay. So firstly, sir, what is their security implication? Sir, any coastal attack, if has to happen, it can happen from where? Maldives. Side se bhi coastal security attack, something like a 2611 again can happen. So, or if there is any, so terrorism can also happen from there, or any Chinese naval presence in Maldives can be an immediate cause of concern from whom? India. In India's immediate naval backyard, any Chinese, large-scale Chinese presence in Sri Lanka or Maldives, which are very close to India, is a matter of concern for India. So location-wise, any threat to coastal security, either from security, either from terror groups or the navy of third countries docking in Maldives can be a matter of concern for whom? For India. Also, location wise, sorry. Also, location wise, what happens? Also, location wise, there is another concern. And what is that? That almost 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 two-third of the total oil trade of the world, including of India, passes close to Maldives, or passes from the route close to Maldives, and including 50% of container traffic or goods trade. Container traffic or goods trade also passes through this region. So you'll see that from trade perspective, that's something which is eventually going to happen, that the naval, they are sitting on some of the major trading lanes of the world, the sea-based trading lanes of the, or the sea lines of communications. So some of the major sea lines of communications and trade, who are sitting there, these group of 1100 islands, the Maldives, okay, that is sitting there. Now, apart from this, so that is why if that any activity or any strong naval presence in this region can also have an influence over the trade that happens through this region or through this territory. So firstly, that's the significance of Maldives to India. एक और है जैसे तो चीज significance क्या है, ये बार बार मैं कहता हूँ, आएगा सर, सबका नंबर आएगा, काय में? Climate change, sir, climate change. Maldives is one of the lowest lying countries in the world, and if and when already the sea levels are rising, and a number of these Maldivian islands will get submerged, and a number of people living on these islands will become climate refugees, and these climate refugees will come where, sir? India. These climate refugees will either go to Sri Lanka or they will come to India. Okay, so even that climate change is a very big concern for these countries, and it can have security implications for India. Another such country is Bangladesh. Bangladesh is also a low-lying country. It is already seeing rise in water levels. So then if and when climate change becomes worse in Bangladesh, which is very low-lying and sees a number of rivers, if you see Bangladesh map, it is crisscrossed by a number of rivers. So as climate change happens, they also going to lead to a lot of climate refugees. A number of them are going to come to India. Okay, so that's India's geography. Okay, so I told you, right, geography is going to play that important role on foreign policy. You can't escape geography. Okay, so as and when that time comes, ये आपके और हमारे जीवन में ही आएगा. Okay, तब हम पढ़ेंगे कि घुसपैठिए आ गए, घुसपैठिए. Intruders have come, है ना? So that's like India will have many Mexico problems in the future. Okay, now so climate change is also a matter of concern. Climate change related issues are primarily an immediate concern for Maldives. An immediate concern for Maldives. Now, next, sir, what is there? Now, let's talk about the historical background. 1965, Maldives attained independence from whom? Britain. Maldives attained independence from Britain. Then 1970s to 1980s to 1990s, over 3 decades, the ruler of Maldives was Gayoom. Abdul Gayoom. He was a military, he was an authoritarian, partly ruler with a military backing. In Maldives also has a military, sir. Maldives also has a army. क्या करेगी Maldives की army? I am telling you, no, these armies are ultimately used by rulers to suppress dissent. Okay, ये Maldives army is not going to fight the Indian army or the Chinese army, right? So that is there. So the Maldives ruler Gayoom, who was an authoritarian leader, was supported by whom? Supported by India. India provided a strong support to the ruling elites during the 3 decades of Gayoom's rule, and obviously there is not election कुछ नहीं है. 3 decades तक आज तक कोई आया नहीं जो election जीतता रहे. Okay. So Gayoom's rule was an authoritarian ruler supported by India, and India provided financial assistance, and also what? Military assistance when needed, as was visible where? In Operation Cactus. As was visible in Operation Cactus. Surgical strike. There is also surgical strike. So you see that this Operation Cactus in 1988 is happening when? Under whom? The Rajiv Gandhi era, where basically what is happening is a group of mercenaries, based out of Sri Lanka. They said that these are a group of mercenaries based out of Sri Lanka who were militant extremists, partly associated with the LTT also. So they wanted to escape the army, Sri Lankan army's attack against them. So they left the coast of Sri Lanka and went targeting to capture power where? In Maldives. Kya? They said they will kill the ruler, capture power there, or bana denge apna rule. Okay. And they also, so that is there. So as these groups of mercenaries were detected near the coast of whom? Maldives. The Maldivian ruler Gayoom sent a message to India, formally asking India for providing immediate assistance. And India provided immediate assistance. The Indian Navy already had a certain amount of presence in the Maldivian waters. India continues to maintain a naval presence in Maldivian waters. And India immediately dispatched a naval fleet. So फिर क्या हुआ? कुछ नहीं हुआ. All these mercenaries were the ones who were forced to surrender. They had taken some hostages, etc. But when the Indian Navy showed up, they realized that time is up. Okay. Ultimately, Gayoom's rule, which was threatened by these mercenaries, is put back into its place. And this again, signaled that India is willing to support Maldives. And Maldives said, who first? India first. India is our closest ally. India first approach. Okay. So that is there. So bahut bhaichara hai. Okay. So that is there. And now that is what was historically the position. This is what was historically the position. Now, however, in 2008, finally Mr. Gayoom, after Mr. Gayoom gave up power in 2008, first army was in charge, and then in 2008 elections were organized. The first ever election in Maldives. Okay, and in the 2008 elections, the MDP, the Maldivian Democratic Party, under Nasheed came to power. Under Nasheed came to power and continued what? Close relations with India. However, in 2012, before the next elections, Nasheed's government was forced to resign. Nasheed was forced to resign and was charged with a corruption. Was forced to resign and charged with corruption and assassination attempts. Most of these allegations were without a base. Okay, was forced to, and thus Nasheed was forced to resign in 2012 and forced into an exile in Britain. Forced into an exile to Britain. And in 2013, fresh elections were held. These elections were rigged through the use of force. And ultimately in 2013, Nasheed's half-brother, Abdullah Yamin, captured power. But before any of this happened, as Nasheed was forced to resign, Nasheed had also maintained good relations with, continued to maintain and had been a strong votary of good relations with India. And it is at this time, it had been a votary of good relations with India, and to that extent, GMR, which is the airport wala, who build airports and maintain them, like Delhi airport also, GMR, right? So it is an India-based company, GMR was granted a contract to expand the Malé airport, to expand the airport in Maldives. Near Malé Island, there is the Hulhule Island, which has the airport, okay, in Maldives, by Nasheed's government, GMR, which is an Indian company. But in 2013, as Yamin comes to power, Yamin revoked what? GMR's contract. Yamin revoked GMR's contract and granted it to a Chinese company. In 2014, when? In 2014, they granted it to a Chinese company. Kyun? Because who? The first ever visit by a Chinese president, sir, Chinese president is coming to Maldives. First ever. Aaj tak kabhi aayi nahi. Okay. In 2011, firstly, China for the first time opened its embassy. Where? In Malé. Signaling that. And then 2013 onwards, Xi Jinping strongly pushed for the One Belt, One Road initiative with a strong maritime component. Then in 2014, President Xi visited Maldives, and as he visited Maldives, you see this, the airport project was granted to Chinese companies. That's not all. A contract to construct 1,000 what? Houses on largely on reclaimed land from sea was also granted to Chinese companies. खरीद सकते हैं हम भी यहाँ. This is not meant for what? Maldives people. उनकी औकात के बाहर है ये घर खरीदना. Most of them will be bought by the Chinese only. Okay. So these are going to be very expensive houses and luxury condos, etc., whatever they are there. So this signifies whose influence is increasing? China. Now this is there. Then what is happening is that in 2017 China Maldives and China signed a FTA, a free trade agreement. Maldives and China signed a FTA in 2017. Okay. Now, Maldives and China signed an FTA in 2017, and they signed an FTA in 2017. Also, Maldives only became the second country in South Asia. The second country in South Asia after Pakistan to sign an FTA with whom? China. India has an FTA with China? No, sir. वैसे ही there's so much Chinese goods in India. So second country in South Asia after Pakistan. In the meanwhile, Yemen also withdrew, not in 2017 but even before, withdrew after coming to power. Yemen also withdrew Maldives from Commonwealth. Why? Because Yemen had captured power partly through the use of force, and had tried to jail whom? His opponents, including Nasheed, and that has forced Nasheed into an exile. So Britain and other European countries had criticized what? The developments in Maldives and Yemen's actions of putting what? The opposition politicians in jail, etc. So Yemen ne said, why are you criticizing us? We'll leave the Commonwealth. Anyways, we have found a new love that's called China, right? So in that context, that's there. And Maldives and China signed this FTA in 2017. Now this FTA is hugely significant, sir. Why? That is what I'm going to explain to you. But before we do that, let's take a break because it will take some 15 minutes or so. So first, after the break, we'll complete Maldives. How much long break? 15 minutes is enough? No? Half an hour? What will you do in half an hour? 5:15 we'll start. Okay, 20 minutes, 5:15 we'll start. Maldives will complete, then either Bangladesh or Sri Lanka.